Pregnancy loss affects 1 in 4 known pregnancies, which means that if you know a few women, chances are you know someone else who's also experienced a pregnancy loss. We have a tendency then to compare our experience with someone else's. And I want to let you know that grief comparison is probably one of the worst traps that we can get ourselves into. I wrote about it in my book, all of these lines, and it's the very first thing that I say in the book because it's such an important thing. If you've experienced a loss, maybe more than one, maybe this is your first or your only, it doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you that your grief and your way of dealing with it is exactly right because you're doing it. And as long as you wake up every day, you're doing grief right. As much as you're doing it right, you're going to come across stories of other people's grief. I'm Bianca Johnson, the author of the book All of These Lines, My Story of Pregnancy, Loss and Hope. And on this channel, I share stories from my book, as well as supporting activities and additional information. So if you are someone who has experienced pregnancy loss or know someone who has, I'd love if you'd subscribe so that you can get updates. I share a video every Monday. If you've experienced a loss, you're going to come across other people's stories, particularly if you're researching pregnancy loss or anything like that. And you're going to want to compare yourself to those people. And I'm just here to remind you that there is no comparison. You will come across stories, perhaps even mine, that sound so much worse than what you experienced. And you're going to be amazed at how pulled together someone else comes across. You may come across someone's story that doesn't look on the surface as severe as yours, and then wonder why they are completely falling apart. And as has been the thing on just about all the social media at the moment, kindness matters. We really don't know what's going on behind someone's facade. Know that your grief is yours and yours alone, and you're the only one who gets to decide when you are ready to move on, when you are experiencing the right emotions. Through my years of therapy, during my losses and my pregnancies, I was constantly fighting with my therapist that I was doing grief wrong. I was too sad. I was crying too much. I wasn't crying enough. I didn't have it as hard as other people. And I remember her saying to me that I needed to leave the online support groups that I found so helpful in my experience because I was clearly seeing too many other stories. And looking back now, I know how unhelpful that was because it wasn't about seeing and hearing other people's stories. I wasn't necessarily comparing my grief to other people's grief exactly. I was needing someone to validate my own emotions and feelings of that grief. And so I'm here to do that for you. Your grief is yours. How you manage it, handle it, express it is entirely up to you. And it is yours to carry, and it is yours to hold. And your feelings are 100% valid, whether you are able to brush off your loss and move on to the next thing and focus on that, or if you need to take 3 months leave from work and really sit with the emotions. It's entirely your life experience that decides how you cope with that grief. And the one thing I will say is that often grief is going to come back. You may not even have processed your losses at the time that they happened. You may not have had a chance to sit in that grief. You may not have been able to feel all the emotions, but years later, something else will happen. And suddenly you'll be processing the grief of those losses as well as whatever you're experiencing in that new moment. And so I want to give you permission for that because grief is cyclical. It comes round every single time we experience grief of any kind. We are really processing the emotions of all of the grief that we've experienced in our lives. And I remember being so confused by how severely I was handling the grief of my kitten who was run over. It was 6 months after I'd lost my best friend and her son in a car accident. And I, at that time, had just pushed through and done things and helped. And that was what I was good at. When I lost Tapioca, suddenly I was dealing with his loss, this tiny little kitten who I'd absolutely adored. But on top of that, it was my chance to feel a lot of the emotions that I'd pushed down at the time of Gill and Connor's death. And the same thing happened with my early miscarriages. I didn't have time to grieve them. I was still processing a loss when I found out I was pregnant again. Experienced 4 pregnancies in 1 year, and then suddenly I was in a pregnancy that went to full term and had a kid. And so there was so much going on. It really wasn't until I realized that my fertility journey had come to an end, well and truly come to an end, that I even really could process the grief of all of my losses. It felt like there was this final end to the process. All of this to say that your grief is valid, however you're doing it, whether you're moving on and carrying on with life, whether you are struggling to get out of bed, as long as you wake up every morning. And if you're watching this video, then you probably are. As long as you get up and you wake up and you remain in this world, you're doing grief right. And I'm here to support you. If you are looking for something to guide you through those dark morning hours when you're scrolling through YouTube trying to find people that can share your story, I have a free journal that you can download called Finding Your Words, 7 Pregnancy Loss Journaling Prompts. And those will help you to just get a little bit of clarity. I will never, ever tell you that it's time to get over your grief. I will never, ever tell you that you're doing grief wrong. I will never, ever tell you that your emotions are too big or too small or too anything. Because however you do grief, you're doing grief right. And if this resonated with you, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. I share educational information. I share journaling prompts. I share my story. I'll be interviewing experts in the next few months. And you'll be able to find all of that here on Finding Ways to Grow Around Grief. I'm Bianca Johnson from Bianca Johnson Empowerment. And I would love if you would subscribe to my channel. And remember, you've survived 100% of your worst days. You can survive this one. Sending you so much love.